Major outrage in Texas today after the state attorney general, Ken Paxton, likened kids getting gender-affirming medical care to child abuse. Paxton says medical care such as puberty blockers, hormone therapy, and gender-affirming surgery must be stopped, adding that he'll do everything he can to, quote, protect against those who take advantage of and harm young Texans. The Texas Governor Greg Abbott taking it a step further by ordering state agencies to investigate any reported instances of what he's calling abuse.
As you saw there earlier this year, Ken Paxton, Attorney General down in Texas, had an opinion about how families with trans youth are child abusers and we need to investigate it. So of course, the governor, Greg Abbott, decided to go ahead and try and weaponize many of the departments to go after those families, to investigate them and figure out what kind of child abuse is going on here. Yes, that was early out in February, which then led into the summer of these potential investigations going, pushback from folks that were challenging it in court and many organizations that were looking to protect citizens. But there's new stuff from the Washington Post that points out because that part did fail, which we'll get to, they want a step further, specifically from Ken Paxton's office. But when it comes to that whole youth thing that we saw off the top there from Paxton, and he's looking to protect the youth of Texas. Do you guys remember what he felt about the youth of Texas that died in Uvalde? That youth? Watch that again in case you forgot what he thinks and what we should do after this whole thing happened. Watch.
Comfort.
Look, I think it's difficult to give comfort. If I lost one of my children, I'd be pretty devastated. Especially in a way that is so senseless and seemingly has no purpose. I think I would just have to, if I had the opportunity to talk to people, I'd have to say, look, there's always a plan. I believe God always has a plan. Life is short no matter what it is, and certainly we're not going to make sense of a young child being shot and killed way before their life expectancy, and so. Even though we can't make sense of it, I would just have to encourage them to hold on to their faith and to hold on to their belief.
Paxton's solution there for folks after Uvalde was hold on to your faith, and life is short for a bunch of children in elementary school that were shot and killed. That's his thought. But when it comes to trying to have a politically motivated message as far as trans youth, it's I'm looking to protect the kids of Texas. Preemptively, it seems here, except he has these actionable things he was doing as far as going after the families, as we point out there. Let's jump down to graphic 5 though, you guys, because this is the new stuff. They failed on their attempts for looking to investigate families and take children away from their parents that love them and are looking to support them. So since that failed, apparently we went here. Employees at the Texas Department of Public Safety in June of this year received a sweeping request from Republican Attorney General Ken Paxton's office to compile a list of individuals who had changed their gender on their Texas driver's license and other department records during the past 2 years. This is what the quote was: need total number of changes from male to female and female to male for the last 24 months, broken down by month. That's what the chief of the DPS's driver's license division emailed colleagues in the department on June 30th. After more than 16,000 such instances were identified, DPS officials determined that a manual search would be needed to determine the reason for these changes. DPS spokesperson Travis Considine told the Post in response to their questions about this whole thing. So he said a verbal request was received, he wrote in an email. Ultimately, our team advised the AG's office, Paxton's office, that the data requested neither exists nor could be accurately produced. Thus, no data of any kind was provided. So they failed, but asked who in Paxton's office had requested these records, he replied, I cannot say. Wonder why? He can't say who it was that was looking for information on who had changed their gender on their driver's license in the past 2 years within the state. And for what reason on top of that as well. Some people had speculation as to why they were doing this, but first, before we get into that speculation, which is probably pretty true, what are your thoughts on this, Burbank?
Yeah, I think it's wild that they're treating children who feel like their gender identity doesn't match up with what they're called on the outside with what's happening in the inside. To say to your child, your feelings are valid. You can live your life how you want to. That somehow is abuse, and telling them, actually, no, you need to stick with your sex assigned at birth. That's who you are. I'm telling you who you are, how you have to dress, how you have to act. That sounds more like child abuse than the former to me. Very simple. Then when you get into like who is a groomer? Is it the people who are in the transgender community? Is it people who are gay, members of the LGBTQ+ community? When I think about who gave me unwanted sexual attention when I was under the age of 18, it was always heterosexual, older white men. Every single time. And so the fact that they're the ones calling all of these other communities groomers is weird to me, and making it seem like it's perverse to be a part of those communities. But why are they so attached to these ideas of gender? These people who are older, usually white men. I think it's because, we have a patriarchy, and this is where they get so much of their value from as a human being. They're like, I'm a strong man, I fit this role. Who would I be without that? So if we get rid of this idea of gender, they lose their value as a person instead of getting their value from, I don't know, being a kind, good person to other people. That's where I get a lot of my value. So I don't need these ideas of gender and this external validation. That's something we should maybe unpack with them. But instead, they're out making laws for everybody else.
Yeah, or mindsets of superiority. But then collecting folks and trying to figure out which of these 16,000 folks within the state had changed their gender on their driver's licenses. Then what's the next plan? People wondered that, and there's all kinds of things. There's throughout history we've had certain folks that have been compiled on a list. And although maybe it doesn't have to be that extreme, there's certainly a limitation on folks' rights. That is a history when it comes to Paxton and Abbott in this state. So here's some of the speculation as to why they were doing this. Public records obtained by the Post do not indicate why the Attorney General's office sought these driver's license information. But advocates for transgender Texans say Paxton could use the data to further restrict their right to transition, calling it a chilling effort to secretly harness personal information to persecute already vulnerable people. And we already know that. This is another brick building towards targeting these individuals. That's what Ian Pittman said. He's an Austin attorney who represents Texas parents of transgender children investigated by the state that they did get to do that too. They've already targeted children and parents. The next step will be targeting adults. And what better way than seeing what adults had changed their sex on their driver's licenses? So again, once you get pulled over by some of these officials in the state, and maybe something doesn't match up for what they perceive who they're talking to versus what's on the license, who knows what happens next, and then what kind of information goes into what other database. But what Paxton's office is saying right now, nothing. Because that's responsible, and that's answering to the people in your state, if you respected the people of your state.